Hi everyone, today I'm going to be looking at the birth chart of Hunter Schafer. The reason that I wanted to look at her chart is because although she's a Capricorn, to me, she comes across as someone who has a lot of air in her chart. She's very airy, and I don't mean that in a negative way. But yeah, she just seems like she might have some of that in her chart, and I was right, she does. So yeah, I'm gonna read her chart and we'll see what comes up. I'm gonna try and do it pretty intuitively. Last chart I read, Chapel Roan's chart on here, I had notes and everything, and this time I'm just gonna go for it. So yeah. Starting off right away, her ascendant is in the sign of Scorpio. I love a Scorpio. A lot of people hate Scorpios, but Scorpios, people with Scorpio placements, literally any Scorpio placement, have this ability to mirror back to people the worst things about themselves, if that makes sense. And that's, I think, why people don't like Scorpios. It's because people don't want to be reminded of, the bad, more negative qualities about them. But a Scorpio is going to mirror that back to you, whether you like it or not, right? So, there's that. With her ascendant being in Scorpio, though, it essentially means that her chart ruler, at least in the modern astrological tradition, would be Pluto. In the more traditional astrological tradition, her chart ruler would be Mars. So either Mars or Pluto are her chart rulers. I typically kind of do a dual rulership system. So yeah. And a note about the ascendant is the starting point of the entire chart. Different astrologers say different things about the ascendant. Some astrologers say that the ascendant is about how others see you, how you come across to other people, kind of your first impression. But then other astrologers say that the ascendant is actually more about how you view yourself, because it's the cusp of the first house. And the first house has to do with the self. So a lot of astrologers will say that the ascendant is more about how you see yourself, your self-perception, which I kind of agree a little bit more with, but I think it can go, it can go both ways. I think oftentimes how we see ourselves has an effect on how we present to the outside world, right? I don't necessarily think that those two things are that necessary to distinguish between, but just, a note. So yeah, Scorpios are typically very intense. They're very passionate. They can have a lot of baggage, a lot of traumatic things can happen with people who have Scorpio placements. And a lot of this comes from the fact that Pluto is the planet of death and suffering, but it's also the planet of transformation and rebirth. So through the struggle, through the fight of life and all of the traumatic things that come along with life, we can learn to grow and begin anew, right? So yeah, just there is a very intense desire to transform the self with a Scorpio ascendant. Scorpio is also all about power too, right? And the meaning of power and what power means, right? Holding power over others, or others holding and wielding their power over you. And that is a theme that is probably going to have to come up quite a bit for someone with a Scorpio ascendant. The ascendant is forming some tense aspects to Uranus and Jupiter. Jupiter being the planet of expansion, luck, and abundance. I don't know, to me it almost indicates that there could be issues surrounding self-confidence, right? With the ascendant being square Jupiter. Sort of like insecurity in how she comes across, how she presents. I think that that's probably goes hand in hand with also being like trans as well. It's not necessarily like the easiest position to be put in, right? And that also goes hand in hand as well with her ascendant being in the sign of Scorpio. She has literally had like a physical transformation, right? And it's also probably a mental, emotional, spiritual transformation as well, right? Yeah, but there could definitely be some like lingering insecurity, or it could have been something that she encountered early on and now she's kind of maybe grown out of that, right? Like sometimes when there's tense aspects in a chart, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be that way. The energy in a chart is just kind of what we're given by the universe, but we can decide whether or not to, like, basically how we respond to that energy, right? The ascendant is also square Uranus as well. Yeah, that's just very, like, I think she's very eccentric. I think she's very progressive in her values. Aquarius is the sign as well as Uranus, and Uranus is in Aquarius, forming a square to the ascendant. It's the planet that resides over kind of chaos and freedom and revolution. So it's a very freeing influence in the chart to have it forming that square to the ascendant, right? She's very free spirit in a lot of ways, very unconventional in a lot of ways, right? And I think you can see that in artistic pursuits and the kind of things that she's attracted to, and you can also see that like in her political stances. I know that she was, I think, arrested for protesting for Palestinian liberation. That's a pretty progressive view, I think. Yeah, so it does make sense to me that she's got some Aquarian influences in her chart. Yeah, the ascendant as well is forming a sextile to her sun in Capricorn, which is quite lovely. I think she's very, like, she is very, like, vibrant, right? The sun is kind of like the sun is the solar influence, and it represents like our ego, our source of energy, our vitality, just anything having to do with your energy. And it's forming a nice sextile to the ascendant. So I think that she's very lively and almost like captivating, right? Very optimistic too, like always looking on the bright side, you know, the glass is half full, sort of, which is interesting, I think, because her sun is in Capricorn. So she's got a lot of elements in her chart where there's like some soberness and some seriousness, but then there's also some like really fun things going on, and they kind of provide like an interesting like duality. Yeah. But that's pretty much her ascendant. Her sun is in, as I have just been talking about, in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorns are a bit more like reserved, and they can come across as a little bit serious, a little bit like devoted. Maybe it's someone who had to like mature at a very early age, you know? And I think, you know, Sun in Capricorn, it's probably also someone who recognizes the importance of difficult lessons, and the importance of work, right? The importance of hard work, which I think I can definitely see some of that in her. I think that she does feel a sense of duty, especially to art. I did watch that Call Her Daddy interview that she did, and it was really interesting to see how she kind of talked about just like her other artistic pursuits that she likes, like painting and all of that stuff, and drawing, and how she was kind of called, almost, as she likes to say, to acting and that artistic pursuit, and how that, like, it was almost like, I don't know, I couldn't tell if she like really loved acting or if she just felt like a sense of duty to acting. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, not that you can blame anyone. We live in like kind of a messed up world right now where like people got to make money how they can in whatever way they can, you know? And if you're being, you know, offered a lot of roles in these like high budget movies, of course you're going to probably want to take that opportunity. But I would, like, I do wonder if that's like her one true love is acting, or if her one true love is like painting or drawing and she only acts. Like, maybe she does like it, but maybe there's also like a sense of duty there, right? Like feeling a sense of duty to a thing. Not that that's inherently bad, right? I just think it's a little bit more like, it's like head versus heart sort of thing, right? You need both. People like to say follow your heart. Easier said than done, you know? And you also want to be a little bit rational. You want to be a little bit, you know, cognizant of life. So, you know, there's that. Yeah. Her sun is not like forming too many aspects to anything. Which is probably good. Less complications, but it's on the cusp. What system is this? This is a Placidus. I'm doing a Placidus chart. I usually do most of my charts Placidus anyways. It's on the cusp of like the second and the third house. I mean, second house placements are definitely really good for like motivating you. Like, it makes you very career oriented. And I think it's good, probably good for people in like business settings or in Hollywood and stuff to have second house placements, and she has quite a few of them. And her son's here. But it's very close to the third house as well. So you can kind of interpret it both ways, right? Second house has to do with, they say it has to do with like money, possessions, like material objects. That's kind of like the second house. I tend to think that the second house is more about values. Like, yes, it is about material things, right? So I do think that she is motivated to acquire wealth, because it provides like a sense of stability, right? And she is a Capricorn, right? So she is an earth sign. She does want to seek out some sort of stability, and unfortunately in today's world you have to have money to get said stability. So there's that. But the second house is about that, right? It is about material objects and stuff, but more so in a more philosophical, abstract sense. The second house is about values, right? So the second house is, this is just me speaking from a place of someone who does also have a lot of second house placements. The second house is about challenges in life when it comes to your values and your value system. Yeah. So, do you value money? Do you value nice, expensive things? Or do you value like family, love, connection, community? Like, what is it you value, right? That's something that you need to answer when you're someone with a lot of second house placements. If anyone watching this has a lot of second house placements. But then again, her sun is also very close to the third house cusp. The third house is all about communication and like kind of like putting yourself out there, connection to others, right? It also is the house that governs over like travel and stuff, like relatively short distance travel. So her vitality, because again the sun is the source of vitality, she derives vitality from, you know, having a stable base, but she also probably derives a bit of her vitality from connecting with others, talking to others. Like, she is very like well spoken, and it does seem like she's very energetic when she's like talking to people. Yeah. You know, earth signs are usually introverted, but I feel like she's like a bit of both, maybe. I don't know, like an extroverted introvert, you know? I don't know. I definitely think she probably likes to talk a lot, but yeah. So that's her sun. Where's her Mercury now? Oh no, we should do the moon. Yeah, let's do the moon. Gemini moon in the 8th house. There's that air I was talking about, right? She does have some air in her chart for sure. Gemini moon people, first of all, are insane. Actually insane. I would know because I have a Gemini moon. Very like not like just unstable. But that's like, I don't mean that like I mean that in like an objective way, you know, with peace and love kind of thing. You're unstable if you have a Gemini moon, and you probably have ADHD. Because Gemini is a mutable air sign. So Geminis are the most scatterbrained out of all the signs. They are all over the place. They're crazy. Absolutely crazy. Love it. But the moon is your emotions, your emotional self, your unconscious. It can also represent the mother figure and the domestic sphere, so the relationship you had to your mother. And that's like a little bit Freudian. I don't know necessarily if I agree 100% when astrologers are like, oh, it means you had a terrible, this means blah, blah, blah with your mother or your father. Like, it could be that. Like, I like to mention that stuff because I think it's kind of interesting and kind of funny, but it's more of like a pop psych take. Anyways, Gemini moon basically just means that her emotions are kind of all over the place. She probably also likes to have, like, a Gemini moon is someone who likes to have like a lot of hobbies and a lot of interests. Kind of like, it's a bit of that hobby hoarder energy, you know, where it's like you have a lot of curiosity and you're emotionally motivated to engage with your curiosity. So it's like, you read a book and you read the first few chapters of the book, and then you get bored of the book, and then you want to read a new book and you read the first few chapters of that book, you get bored, you want to move to another thing, and then maybe you end up trying to knit, and then maybe you get bored of that eventually, and then you try to like paint, and then you get bored of that. Do you know what I mean? It's very like, it's all over the place. It's very like childlike, right? I think people hate on Geminis a lot, but Geminis are very childlike in their curiosity, right? And if you have a Gemini moon, you definitely want to lean more into that to like feel sane. You know what I mean? Because if you don't like feed your curiosity, at least I personally, as someone with a Gemini moon, find that like I just start to get emotionally restless if I don't feed my curiosity in that way. Yeah. It's very talkative too. A Gemini moon is someone who likes to talk your ear off, can talk your ear off for hours about various different topics. and just gathering a lot of information about a lot of various topics, right? A little bit of this, a little bit of that, Yeah, it's very intellectual. I would say that she's very intellectual. I would say she's definitely a bit smarter than people give her credit for, I will say. Yeah. Her moon, yeah. And Gemini moon, again, I said it could be associated with the mother figure. Take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, but it could indicate like that the mother figure was kind of like inconsistent in their caregiving with the moon in Gemini. You know what I mean? Like maybe the mother figure would provide emotional support sometimes and then be kind of absent other times. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like an inconsistent quality of care. And it's also in the 8th house. The 8th house is the house of death, the house of transformation, and the house that governs over shared resources. So it's a little bit dark. Like it's a little bit of a dark placement. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. She has quite a few of those like darker themes in her chart. I definitely think that she probably is a fairly spiritual person. She probably is a very existential person. Maybe she thinks about death quite a bit. Yeah. I definitely think that she's probably connected to feeling like one with things that are like beyond just the physical, if that makes sense. Yeah. The 8th house and the 12th house are always kind of not the easiest to interpret because they're kind of houses that are representative of something beyond just the physical world. But her moon, yeah, again, forming an opposition to Pluto in the 2nd house, as well as an opposition to Mercury in the 2nd house. Yeah, definitely some nervous system dysregulation going on with that opposition to Mercury. Definitely, yeah, some form of neurodivergence potentially. She probably is very anxious. I don't know if she's necessarily touched on that. I haven't seen too many of her interviews, but that could be something to keep in mind. I think she's definitely someone who really likes to rationalize her feelings and like intellectualize her feelings. Like I think she can understand her feelings on an intellectual level, but I think she's probably someone who has trouble feeling her feelings. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that maybe she also tries to like repress her feelings. Maybe that's something that she was kind of encouraged to do in childhood, was to kind of bury her feelings. You know, the issue with burying your feelings though and suppressing your rage and your anger is that it kind of festers beneath the surface and it creates this just like this bubble of resentment. And I can kind of feel some of that coming up in her chart. I think she's probably resentful of a lot of things. I don't necessarily know. I mean, I'll get to that later. She does have like a 2nd house Pluto, and that could indicate like maybe financial struggles growing up, stuff like that as well. And that obviously not having like a supportive base of can create a lot of like emotional struggles, right? It's hard to be emotionally regulated when you don't have stability. Yeah. But it's forming, I think it's forming a lovely trine to Mars, though, her moon, and it's forming a trine to Uranus. So again, she's very progressive, she's very forward thinking, she's very artistic. She's also very motivated, very, very, very driven. It almost seems like she feels like a responsibility. I don't know if she wants to, like, have kids one day or, like, adopt or, like, whatever. Like, it just almost seems to me like has, like, a duty, or she has a sense of responsibility to, like, leave something behind after she's gone. Like, she's motivated by that. I don't know if she has any siblings necessarily or what, but yeah. But yeah, she is very driven, is very motivated. Yeah, it's interesting though. I think that it's almost like death is motivating her, or like the finality of life, and the fact that we only have a limited number of years. That's like something that motivates her quite a bit. I guess the word I'm looking for would be legacy. I think she's concerned with her legacy. Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about her Mercury. Mercury in Sagittarius. I love that. Yeah, she is very... She's very, like, expansive and optimistic when it comes to, like, her communication style, as well as how she, like, gathers information. I think she has... This comes back to what I said earlier when I said I think she's smarter than most people give her credit for. She's got, like, I think she's able to, like, learn quite a bit about a certain subject. But again, her Mercury in Sag is opposing her moon in Gemini. Sagittarius is the sign of the devoted scholar, whereas Mercury is the sign of kind of like the hobbyist, right? So she's got this kind of polarity between, like on an emotional level, like wanting to engage in a lot of different topics, a variety of different topics, but then on like an intellectual level, like she wants to be like devoted to the one thing. It's almost like she wants to be seen as like an expert in like at her craft, at like one particular craft, like her, like on a cognitive level, like that's what she wants or that's what she thinks she wants. But then on an emotional level, she actually maybe needs to engage her curiosity more. I think that she probably tends to swing more towards like, again, rationalizing and intellectualizing things and not necessarily asking like, what do I want from life, right? It's more about like status and legacy, and I think she's overly concerned with that. I think that maybe that too, like maybe wanting to be seen as like an expert or like a status symbol in some respects, maybe that helps her also cope with like any feelings of insecurity that she has. Maybe. Anyways, that could just be me. Like, that's a little... If I had to speculate, that's what I would say. Yeah, her Mercury is forming a trine. It's trining her midheaven as well. So she does very good financially and career-wise, because the midheaven is the highest point in the chart. It's, you know, it's what everyone's looking up at. It's your public image. It's who you are in the eyes of the public or of the community, right? She does well for herself, career-wise, and in the eyes of the public, when she, you know, when she's tapped into that role of being like the expert at something, right? Yeah. But I think too, her moon though in Gemini as well is sextiling the midheaven. So it's also like, either way, it's actually good. Maybe she doesn't realize that, but either way, whether you lean it, like whether she has a variety of different projects going or whether she's doing this one thing, she's going to be successful either way, in my opinion. It's just that when she leans into that curiosity, I think like sextiles are more dynamic, right? So that's going to take a little bit more work for her to see the fruits of her labor, right? It's like, it's kind of like easier almost for her to be in this like intellectual mind over heart space, you know? Her Mercury is also trine Saturn. And Saturn, as we know, is the ruler of Capricorn, which is the sign her sun is in. So it does indicate to me, like, again, that sense of duty that she has. And it comes back to what I was saying. What the hell was that? I don't know. It comes back to what I was saying earlier, though, about, like, like she has this commitment to duty, and it comes back to, it connects back to like her needing a stable base, and also potentially her creating some sort of legacy or some sort of wealth to leave behind to, you know, like the next generation. Yeah, I think she's very hardworking. I think she's very devoted, definitely. She certainly is gifted, that's for sure. Because her Mercury is actually, yeah, her Mercury's trining her North Node in Leo. That's forming a trine to Saturn, trine Mercury. So she's actually got a grand fire trine in her chart, which is, yeah, crazy. And it's almost like she's got like a kite or like a grand air trine too. Crazy, insane. Yeah, I wonder if there's a little bit anger there though with the fire, with that fieriness. She's a little bit more fiery than people think she is. Yeah, definitely. Anyways, though, that's her Mercury. Yeah, her Mercury squared Jupiter, though, as well. That's one other thing I should point out. Mercury squared Jupiter. It's almost like she doesn't have a lot of confidence in her intellectual capabilities. Like, there's some self-doubt there for sure. Yeah. And I think she has trouble. I wonder if she struggles with, like, art block a bit. Like, I think she sometimes struggles with expressing, like, her creative side because her Jupiter is in the 5th house, which is the house of creativity. And it's the house of fondness and joy and all that. Jupiter and Pisces in the 5th house. Very artistic, but that Jupiter is not well aspected, so it's like, yeah. Maybe I'll talk more about that later, but, yeah. Her Venus is in Capricorn as well. She definitely, yeah, she's very devoted to her partners. A Venus in Capricorn is someone who's very loyal, someone who's also maybe a bit takes relationships pretty seriously. It's someone who needs and craves a sense of stability in relationships too. Venus in Capricorn, though, I wonder, like, because Capricorn, again, is Saturn ruled, so it has to do with lessons, with karma. Venus in Capricorn people, I think Chappell Roan's Venus was also in Capricorn, but they have to learn a lot of lessons when it comes to love, lessons in love. There's going to be probably some heartbreak there. The issue really is they need to find someone who's devoted as they are, right? And as serious, takes things as seriously as they do, right? which is hard to do. I think, yeah. Yeah, again, it's squaring off against Saturn. Her Venus is square Saturn, so it's kind of reiterating what I just said. Yeah, she's very serious when it comes to her romantic and love affairs, very devoted. I wonder if she almost comes across as like cold at first, like to some of her like partners, if she almost seems like a little bit too reserved for them. Do you know what I mean? But because of that, though, I would tell her to watch out for people who like I think there are some people who genuinely want to like bring you out of your shell, so to speak, because they're like invested in seeing who you really are. But I think that there's people that get a kick out of seeing you become vulnerable with them, only for them to kind of misuse that vulnerability and that trust, if that makes sense. Like, I think she's probably had some scenarios where people kind of, see the real her, get her out of her shell, sort of. And then it backfires, and then she retreats even further into her shell. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, there's that. Her Mars is in Libra. Oh, God, I hate that. I mean, I love that, but I also hate it because Mars is, in traditional astrology at least, it's in its detriment in Libra because Mars rules over Aries, right? And so when Mars is in the sign that is opposing Aries, which Libra opposes Aries, they're opposites. They're a duality or a polarity. When Mars is in Libra, it's just Mars is your aggression, it's your action, it's your assertion, it's how you get what you want in life, how you meet your goals. Mars and Libra people are just flat out too nice. Like, they suck at standing up for themselves. Generally, right? If there's other stuff in the horoscope, sometimes there can be some things to counteract that. I mean, she has a Scorpio rising, so there's that. But I think she's a little bit too nice, and I think she's afraid of conflict. I don't think she likes to be in conflict with people, and I think that sometimes that can mean that she doesn't like stand up for herself, or she doesn't say what she really wants to say or act how she really wants to act in that moment. Again, I think she might have some issues expressing her anger. Like, there might be some repression there. I think maybe too it could also relate to her gender identity. Like I think women are all, like, cis women are already discouraged from being angry, but I feel like if you were like a trans woman, I'd imagine you would feel it would be even more discouraged almost, because it's like you wouldn't be like you wouldn't be sticking to like the norms of femininity, if that makes sense, right? Because it's like women don't get angry, only men get angry, and it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's a Mars in the 12th house too. The 12th house is the house of sorrows and personal undoings. So yeah, I do think she could stand up for herself a bit more in that regard. I think she's just a natural mediator. I think she's good at mediating conflict. I wonder if she had to do that a lot as a child, like mediate between, maybe her parents got into fights a lot and she had to step in and play the role of like peacekeeper. While I think it's a lovely quality to like want to synthesize like duality, like wanting to balance polarity, she also needs to recognize that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stand up for yourself, you know? But I mean, it is, her Mars is well aspected. Like, I think, I definitely think it's, like, benefit, like, it's, like, she had, like, it's almost like a little bit people-pleasery, but it's, like, it's helped her career-wise. Like, I think she gets along really well with her, like the people that she works with, and I think that the people that she works with appreciate that about her. You know what I mean? That she's very, like, diplomatic and yeah, I'd just be careful, because there definitely are people that would take advantage of that kindness. Yeah, so we've got the less kind of important planets. We've got, like, the social planets now, like Jupiter and Saturn. Again, Jupiter and Pisces in the 5th house. But it's not aspected, like, super well. Like, it's forming this sort of T-square between the moon and Mercury. So, yeah, I do think that... I think her art is very freeing for her, because again, the 5th house is all about creativity, but the 5th house is also about, like, things that you have a fondness for. So it could be pets or children or, like, just any sort of pursuits that you really enjoy, right? It's like a very heart-centered place of the chart, and I think she feels a sense of freedom when she, like, engages in that part of herself, but I think that she sometimes has some trouble, like, getting there. Like, again, coming back to the, like, feeling emotionally repressed, or, you know, having struggles, like, whether they be related to, like, mental health or, like, physical health, or just, like, executive dysfunction, you know? Yeah. But I think when she does tap into her creative side, I think she can make some very beautiful pieces, some very, like, stuff that kind of, like, transcends the boundaries of, like, normal everyday living, you know, as is typical of a Jupiter and Pisces in the 5th house. She's got her Saturn and Aries in the 6th. I remember I think Chapel Roan also had a Saturn in Aries in the 6th house. I talked about with Saturn in Aries. Well, Aries is associated with the head, so 6th house, house of health and service. So watch out for the head injuries, you know. Saturn in Aries in the 6th. Again, Saturn can also be associated with the father figure sometimes, so it could indicate, like, a father figure that was pretty hot-headed, you know. But Saturn is also about how we, like, seek to, like, kind of, like, establish ourselves in the world, right? And how we, like, work towards things. I think she's actually, like, semi-decent when it comes to, like maybe, like, making routines, like day-to-day routines, you know? Maybe she's one of those girls that's got, like, a planner and is writing everything down and is, like, really organized. Can't be me, but, you know, I wish. But yeah. She probably has had to figure out, though, with a Saturn in the 6th, how to kind of, like, balance her, like, her like home life and her day-to-day life with like her public life and her public image. That might like it, that stuff may have been a struggle at first, you know. What else do we have? Got Uranus in the third. It's close to the IC. I wonder if she like moved around a lot or had like a tumultuous childhood. I'm not sure if I already said that. It could be that. But yeah, Uranus in Aquarius in the third house. Uranus is all about like awakening power, like awakening when it comes to thinking outside of yourself. So when it comes to thinking of others, when it comes to thinking on a more collective level. Uranus is an outer planet, so it moves fairly slowly. So everyone born within the time frame that Hunter was born in has their Uranus in Aquarius. So, you know, Aquarius being the sign associated with breaking free from norms, revolution, sort of like just anything having to do with like activism, progressive forms of activism. And she's got it in the third house. So the house position kind of indicates more than the sign position, because again, everyone has, like, I'm born 99 and I also have, like, I have my Uranus in the same place that she does, in the same sign that she does, different house, but same sign, right? So Uranus in the third house, it indicates like that she kind of like her awakening power, like that power of awakening, of being focused on collective issues, that's experienced most notably for her in the third house, areas relating to the third house. So areas surrounding like communication, right? And that could also be stuff having to do with like protests, like local protests. Like I think that she probably does some of that, as we've seen. Community involvement. Yeah, I definitely think that she is someone that focuses on that. It's kind of like revolutionary acts through like your interpersonal relationships almost, right? With people that you're close to, talking to people that you're close to, and how that can like influence your mindset and cause you to think about more wider ranging social issues, right? And then she's got her Neptune here as well in Aquarius in the third house. Neptune is all about transcending boundaries, and it's about becoming connected to a higher power. But that's only in the more positive realm of things. Neptune can also be someone who is very delusional and like very deceptive, someone who doesn't really understand themselves, they're not very self-aware, right? So the difference between someone who is connected to a higher power, someone who is like enlightened, versus someone who is like delusional, the difference between that typically resides in how grounded one is, right? And I do think that she has some Capricorn placements, so I do think that she is grounded. I would say maybe a little bit too grounded. Do you know what I mean? Like I think yeah, I think maybe she has some difficulty like connecting to that, right? But she will kind of experience that again when it comes to like third house things. The third house again being the house of communication, of like just exchange of information, and it's also the house of like short distance travel, so it has to do with stuff relating to one's like immediate community environment, right? So yeah, I think getting connected to her community is really something that will hopefully allow her to feel connected to a higher power. That's also something I think that would inadvertently also help with her like artistic pursuits as well. Yeah, so she's got a second house Pluto. A lot of my clients have second house Pluto. Chapel Run also had a second house Pluto. Second house Pluto people, there can be some envy almost and some jealousy when it comes to what other people have. You know what I mean? Like maybe you're envious of other people's success, of their wealth, of their nice things. Like maybe someone owns a nicer house or like a nice car, and maybe you're envious of that. I think for her it could just be envy of other people's stability, right? Coming back to that stability, the theme of stability. Yeah. It also indicates, again, because Pluto is all about transformation, transformative experiences, it indicates transformation with regards to her value system. Like reanalyzing and figuring out what she values in life is going to be a really big thing, right? And then lastly, or almost lastly, I guess, Chiron. She's got a Chiron and Scorpio in the first house, at least in the Placidus system. Again, that's a wound of the self, because Chiron is the wounded healer, or the trauma asteroid, as I like to call it. That's a wound of the self, right? So it's some sort of deep insecurity with a Chiron and Scorpio in the first. Could be something relating to childhood. Like you're made to feel, Chiron and Scorpio in the first, you're made to feel like you're not good enough, right? And or some sort of event, it could also be some sort of event like fundamentally shattered how you saw yourself and how you thought of yourself. And you haven't been the same since. But I think that's also the more positive element of Chiron, is that Chiron can help us help others, right? So through our trauma, through our wounds, we, learn how to deal with them, we learn how to transmute them, and then we can help other people with that as well. So that's the beautiful thing about Chiron. North Node in Leo, South Node in Aquarius. So the nodes are kind of like destiny points. The South Node is kind of like where you're coming from. If you believe in past lives, it's kind of like the energy that you mastered in a past life. And then the North Node is kind of like the energy that you're going to master in this lifetime. So her South Node being in Aquarius means that she really kind of like was able to embody the ability to like break free from like societal norms, like truly someone who was revolutionary in a past lifetime, right? Whereas now with her North Node in Leo, she's kind of moving towards being the star of the show. You know what I mean? Like it's a little bit more self-focused. But with the nodes, more so than destiny, I think it's about balancing polarities, right? So Aquarius is kind of the sign of the collective and Leo is the sign of the self. So it's kind of finding a balance between the collective and the self, or being able to situate the self within the collective. And that's pretty much all I got. Let me know if you liked this video. Let me know if the editing style was better than the previous one. And hopefully I will see everyone again soon. Thank you so much for watching and being here.